Welcome to this month's Building Forensics Mastermind series, guys. We are going to go over what I have been going through in the past month. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going on this month, because as you can see from the list of things underneath my name, the thing at the top is now the Proof is Possible US Tour. Of course, there's always the book, which is Home Performance Diagnostics, the software that I work on, which is Automated Performance Testing Reports, apt reports, and that actually went through a pretty major redux this summer to 2.0. And the Fall Fast Track Mastermind course has been going on for the last 5 weeks. We're in the last 2 weeks of that. So right now we're putting all our energy toward the Proof is Possible US Tour. You're going to find out a lot more about that very soon. But today we're going to talk about the infinite toolbox. Tools are everywhere. And since we live in the data age, the era of numbers and information, we need to be able to take advantage of this. This is really, really important. So the first thing is I'd like to show you. This was the winning item from this past month's work. That thing on the left is wrapped up in plastic that you can see pulled away on the right. That is a carbon monoxide monitor in a parking garage. The reason that it was wrapped up in plastic when we found it is, of course, because it was going off. And we don't like it when alarms go off. That's not nice. So we're going to wrap this thing in plastic and everything will be fine, right? That is totally ridiculous. So we need to leave this off. If it's going off, it's for a perfectly good reason. It's probably because there's carbon monoxide in the parking garage. We need to take care of that with a fan, not with plastic wrap. All right, so now this is the HVAC checklist from an Energy Star project that I've been working on for the past year and a half. There's an apartment building, and what you're seeing here is design and equipment selection information. These two things precede the install, which is a totally other checklist that's called the Rater checklist for the HVAC installation, and that involves all the testing and commissioning to make sure that the installation actually performs the way that we want it to. So the first two things that always happen are you need to do a heat load calculation, and that is for both heat loss in the wintertime and heat gain in the summertime. And then you need to select the equipment. Now, what I'd like to show you is that data is the key to all of this stuff. This is a checklist made up of numbers and checkboxes and information about this house or apartment that we are designing a system for. And very few professionals are actually going to do this with any degree of competency, and I will show you why. First of all, Chicago, this is the way that it's all supposed to work. Chicago has a 1% and a 99% temperature, design temperature. That means that the 99% hottest day that we're going to reach is 89 degrees Fahrenheit. And the 99% coldest day that we're going to hit is -4 degrees. Now, this is based on weather stations. So you want to pick a weather station that makes sense for the site that you're building this home in. And you're going to select these two. Now, someone will say, well, yeah, but in Chicago last year it got down to -20. So I should put -20 in that box, really? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Because what I did last year when it was -20 is I sent an email out to all of my previous clients and said, hey, clients, just so you know, today it's -20. That means if your system was installed and designed properly, and even at the 100% coldest day, even if the professional had put in -20 degrees in that 99% field, your furnace should be running 24 hours a day today. It should be running nonstop. And mostly what I heard back from people was, oh yeah, no, it runs for about a half an hour and then turns off for about a half an hour. That means that your furnace is over twice as big as it needs to be for that house. Ridiculous. So what we want to do is pick the 1% and 99%, and that is actually in the manuals for Manual J and for the ASHRAE. Second thing that you want to look at is the number of occupants served. This is important in that it is generally the number of bedrooms plus 1. So if we are looking at this piece of paper where it says 2 people live in this house, we would assume that to mean that there's 1 bedroom and that there would be 2 people in there. So it's bedrooms, which is 1, plus 1, which is 2. So this would be a 1-bedroom apartment. I want to double check that. By the way, as I go through this, remember that you are typing in questions that you have into the questions pane of your GoToWebinar screen there. So don't forget your questions, and when we hit the very end, I will take questions all at once, and we can run through them all in one big chunk. So The next thing in line is the conditioned floor area. Now I want you to note that this is a 400 square foot apartment. It's 436 exactly, but this is a very small place. So let's just round up for just the sake of argument. Say that it's 500 square feet, okay? Next thing is the predominant window SHGC. SHGC stands for solar heat gain coefficient. That is not the R value or U value, which are the same thing, basically inverse of each other, which is the insolation. This is about how much radiation from the sun gets in and how much radiation from our bodies and from all the warm stuff inside of our house in the wintertime gets out. So that number has to do with that. Now, the infiltration rate, this is something that's very, very sneaky. And this is why this is a huge opportunity for you who are watching this webinar or watching the recording of it later. What this mechanical engineer put into these fields is average. Now, what in the world does that mean? You don't know. I don't know. The mechanical engineer sure doesn't know. They just put that in there because, I don't know. Something. Let's put the average in there because I have no idea what's going on. That is wrong. Those two values are way, way off what this place is actually going to perform like. And that's a problem because now we're going to start oversizing all of the equipment that's needed for this. The next thing is the mechanical ventilation rate. Now, a mechanical engineer is not going to understand that number. You need to explain this to them because they think that it has to do with how many CFM are delivered by the system. So like they call the air change rate in a room how many times the HVAC system, the furnace or the air conditioner, changes out the air in that room, not the air leakage. So this is something that I had to actually tell this mechanical engineer. This is based on the fact that we've got an exhaust fan in a bathroom running 24 hours a day at 30 CFM minimum. So now that's the number that we put in there, and that's the number that they put into their calculation software. Now the next thing is where we get into the weeds here. These three numbers. The first number, which is 2.12, this is the design latent heat gain. The second thing that you see there, 2.13, is the design sensible heat gain. Now let's forget about the total for a minute and just talk about these two. Sensible heat is temperature. That's the temperature that you can feel. Latent heat is the heat that exists in air when there is humidity in it. And that has to do with if that humidity were to fall out of the air, we have this possibility of raising the air temperature because of that, or lowering it if we were to do condensing, evaporation, do different things. So basically, evaporation is going to lower the temperature of what's around it. Condensation is going to raise the temperature of what's around it. So both of these things are very important. Generally, what they are going to be is about 25% and about 75%. And you can see here we've got roughly 3,000, roughly 7,000. That lines up about with a 70-30 split is what we'd call that. Now, those two things add up to equal the total heat gain in the summertime. So the sun's beating down on the house, we've got some humidity inside, we have a total heat gain possible of 10,402 BTUs per hour. Now, based on that number, we are going to select down here at the bottom the equipment that matches that. Since we have a 500 square foot apartment, we have a very low load, and unfortunately, what you see there at the very bottom with the listed system total capacity at design conditions is 18,000 BTUs per hour. You can see that that's about double the size of what we need. The problem here is that our tiny little apartment is too small for the smallest split system that they make. So the very smallest split system air conditioner that they will manufacture for you is 1.5 tons. A ton being 12,000 BTUs per hour, 18,000 would be 1.5 tons. So that's the smallest that we can go. So it really doesn't matter whether it's 10,000, 12,000, 14,000, 16,000, or 18,000. We're buying an 18,000. That's why some people feel like, manual J's, ASHRAE, this is all too much work. Because really, I'm just going to buy an 18. And this is true in this case. However, I would like to show you this. This is a second report for this exact same building. And this was filled out by a licensed mechanical engineering firm. And here's what we're going to look at. We're going to skip over all the other stuff. You can see that the conditioned floor area up here is 1,000 instead of 500. But the design latent heat gain that they've got for this 1,000 square foot house is 7,000. The design sensible heat gain is 50,000. And that means the design total, which is those two things added together, is 58,000 BTUs per hour. That is a 5-ton air conditioner. Now, when you can see down here that the equipment that they're actually selecting for this apartment is 34,000 BTUs per hour, you see that there's a major discrepancy here. Now, is this a typo? Yes, probably it's a typo, but the fact that the mechanical engineering firm did not realize their mistake on a piece of paper means that now you have a secret piece of information, and this is a weapon for you, and I want you to use this. Sloppiness will go everywhere. If they fill out a piece of paper and they feel like the piece of paper doesn't matter, they will fill it out carelessly, even though this is part of their job, is to deliver this piece of paper. Now, if they did that, what is to say that they wouldn't do that on another piece of paper that maybe is going in for a code compliance permit, or another piece of paper that's going in for design, right? As soon as you start being sloppy and you just don't care about numbers here and there, it will go everywhere. And even if they had an intern fill out this piece of paper, you're going to start using that intern for more and more and more stuff, just to kind of, you're like, this is really easy. So what you need to know is that mechanical engineering firms are absolutely vulnerable to not knowing what they're doing. And I've seen this happen a lot. So the first tool that we are talking about in your infinite toolbox is your brain. Your brain is the most important tool, and if you do not bring your brain to work, none of the other tools that you bring are going to be useful to you at all. And that goes for anybody with a master's degree as well. So, second thing that we're going to talk about tool-wise is this data logger. This is pretty cool. This gives you the ability to get consistent data over a long period of time. You can get this thing will deliver between a week's worth if I'm logging every second, or up to a month. I could do a year. I could log every 15 minutes, every hour. So it's basically filling up the memory. You can see that the memory stick inside of there is only about 20% full. So I've got lots and lots of room. Now this one happens to be Wi-Fi, which is kind of cool, but I'll go through what it shows you. It's going to show temperature changes over time, relative humidity changes over time, and just as a review, relative humidity, what's relative about it is the temperature. So at different temperatures, the humidity potential of that air will be different, right? Warmer air can hold more moisture. And as a result of those two things, we can figure out the dew point, and that is the temperature at which a surface will pull water out of the air onto that surface and make it wet. So this example tool is called a HOBO. It's made by a company called Onset. And so this HOBO is a Wi-Fi unit. You can get these types of units from anywhere starting at 80 bucks and going on up. This thing has magnets on the back, so I can stick it to a plenum. I can stick it to a metal door. I could tape it anywhere at all. So it's kind of a useful tool, especially if you want to be able to set something, walk away, and come back and find out what happened over the past week. So here is my living room over a week. You can see that the temperature is what we're looking at here, and my highest temperature was somewhere around 77 degrees, and the lowest temperature that I had was somewhere around 69 degrees. That's not a huge swing. I'm not that concerned about it, especially because this was at the end of September, and we had the windows open for a lot of this time. So some of the time we'll close the windows if it gets really cold at night. There's also cooking going on in the kitchen, which is attached to the living room. There's also the furnace kicking on every now and then, or the air conditioner, because of this. We're in the shoulder season where sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's hot. So this is just kind of an interesting little graph. Now what I want to show you here is the secondary thing that this will pick up, which is relative humidity. Now that we're layering the temperature, which is blue, and the relative humidity, which is red, you can start to see some really interesting interactions, and I will get more into the interactions in a moment. But what I'd first just like to show you is that this is not what I expected to see. I thought it was going to be a lot calmer in my place, especially in the shoulder season when it wasn't really changing that much, but based on just cooking, having people over into the house, leaving for a number of hours and turning things off, leaving the windows open, closing the windows, all these things made a really big difference in the relative humidity and in the interaction of these two things. This is a very dynamic system. Now let's look at the third thing, which is the dew point. You can see that the dew point temperature spiked up anywhere as high as 67 degrees and went down to about 56 degrees. So this is that's a pretty big range. 67 degree dew point means that if any surface is underneath 67 degrees, and I'll give you a hint, I live in a garden apartment, so my floor is over the ground. And the ground is always about 55 degrees. So I can guarantee you, especially where there's furniture covering and insulating as an effect the floor was wet. Even if it was just a little bit wet, this is going to result in some of these kind of mildew or moldy smells that people will get. So you can kind of see when this happened. And it happened when there was a spike in both the relative humidity and in the temperature at the same time. Very interesting. So I want you to look at this now. This was really what got me interested. The more you know, obviously, you'll know what I say next, the more powerful you are, because information will always win an argument. But at the same time, having been a piano player and knowing that the more you learn about something like the piano, or even about building science or buildings or diagnostics, the more you know you have no clue what's going on. That's the secondary thing that happens. So I'd like to show you what I am mystified by, and I'm going to find out about this and it's message about it in the comments section on the blog when I post this video. So check out these spikes. The spikes that are outlined by the orange bars are inverse spikes. They are opposite each other. So when the temperature goes up, relative humidity goes down. And when the temperature goes down, the relative humidity will go up. Now, there are a couple examples where this is actually not the case. These two right here, there is a spike in both the relative humidity and the temperature in the same direction. So if I really wanted to know what was going on and log it, I'd actually just do 1 day's worth of living, and I would clock everything that happened in actually a log, a handwritten log, and say, we cooked at 6:57 p.m. We turned the oven up to 300, and we ran it for 30 minutes. Then in the morning, I fried some eggs. That took 5 minutes, and that was at 9:32, right? By the way, cooking eggs at 9:30 in the morning on a Wednesday, awesome. Try that sometime. So these two things are going to not line up with each other, and that's very interesting. So now I want to know more about that, and that's something that I personally am going to be finding out about. So dataloggers are one tool that you can use. Theodolite, this is an app that I'm really interested in right now. It was introduced to me by Lou Harriman, who is one of my favorite humidity experts. He's actually the one who's going to help me figure out what was going on in that spike graph. But this thing costs $5. It's an app for your phone. And you are going to get all of this information. You're going to get your location on the globe, your altitude, the time that you took the picture, the elevation, meaning the angle of actually the camera, where you were pointing it, and the compass heading. And all that stuff is super useful if you are in a building that's being built and it doesn't have rooms yet. Because you want to be able to take pictures of like the insulation install or something like that and be able to take pictures of everywhere where there are issues and then be able to just circle those on a map, right, of the building and say, okay, here, 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 here. Now this is going to be able to do that for you. So make sure that you use this if you're taking pictures that are either for just wanting to remember where you were and not have to take notes about it all the time. As you can see up on the top left here, we've got map underneath the preferences, and you can just click on that map and it'll show you where you are on the map and what heading you are. So you can see on a compass kind of a scale what's going on. So all that stuff, super, super cool. I really like that. The second thing, I've talked about this before, it bears repeating because it's a very cool app. It's called RoomScam. You can get a free version. You can get a $5 version. I have the $5 version because it's pro, and I made this map of my condo with this $5 version. You have to practice with it a little bit. It is a tool, right? So crap in, crap out is what they say, and it's true for this as well. So you need to make sure that you really know how to use this. But what's cool about this app is that you hold your phone up to the wall, and the app goes beep, and then it signals you to go to the next wall. You hold your phone up to that wall, and it goes beep, and then you keep on going around the house. It's really, really excellent, and it's incredibly impressive, right? I bring like $15,000 worth of diagnostic tools into my clients' houses, and when I hold up my phone that I carry in my pocket all the time and it starts beeping, they're super, super impressed. So they always want to know what's going on. This is very useful for heat load calculations where you need a room by room measurements, or for energy rating takeoffs. Really great. The last thing that was just told to me by David Flakehouse, who is on the Midwest Home Performance Association board with me, was this forecast.weather.gov website, which generates some pretty cool stuff. So you can see that you've got the same thing we were just looking at, temperature and dew point, and that includes obviously relative humidity down further. But you can also get surface wind, sky cover, precipitation possibility, thunder possibilities, all this stuff. And you could actually go back in time, obviously, also, but you can go forward in time and see the forecast, and it's going to end up looking like this. So you can see the white areas, the up and down bars that are white is daytime, and the up and down bars that are pale gray are nighttime. So you can see the temperature go up in the daytime, go down in the nighttime. You can see the dew point, you can see the possibility of precipitation down here on the third section of this, the sky cover, how cloudy it's going to be. So I could actually be scheduling my appointments. If I'm looking for a leak, I would want to schedule this when there is the biggest possibility of rain. And instead of looking at some forecast that says rain is possible on Thursday, 60%, and then saying rain is possible on Friday, I want to just look at numbers because I'm really trying to get into numbers as much as possible. This is a really excellent app to be able to do that. So again, this is free, and it was at forecast.weather.gov. So lastly, if you want more information, of course, there's over 100 videos at our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that so that you can be part of the chain as we start filming more and more about our tiny lab construction this fall, in less than a month, in fact. We are pumping out episodes of the Building Performance Podcast all the time. That's the only podcast, which is a radio show on the internet, that is devoted to building performance. You can read the book, which is Home Performance Diagnostics. You can work on my software. You can get certified for BPI or as a rater. You can hire me to consult with you or with your clients, and you can be part of my Fall Fast Track. Again, the Fall Fast Track class of 2015. I hope that some of those black belts are watching this right now, but they are finishing up week 5 of a 6-week course, and they are ready to rock their local markets. So thanks very much for tuning in. I hope that you tune in next month as well, and I'll be sending out emails about that. At this point, I will go ahead and take questions.